Well, good evening and happy Monday, everybody. No Saints feast days today, but it is the day that the Lord has made. And as you can see underneath, there's no stream next week. On Wednesday, I'm going on vacation, taking a week off at a lake cabin in Minnesota, and I'm really looking forward to that. So I will not be bringing you guys along on my vacation this year, and everything's going to be just fine. You'll find something else on YouTube to pass your time with. Um, I've been thinking about a particular uh, doctrine that Thomas Aquinas has. He, of course, inherited most of his doctrines from his teachers, and this particular doctrine comes when a human being has oriented themselves to some sort of goal. When a human being has oriented themselves to some sort of goal. And now Aquinas, quite normally and the way that you would expect, he sees that the enjoyment of something is only complete when you actually attain something, right? So you don't get to enjoy a slice of pizza until you've attained that slice of pizza, putting it in your mouth and eating it. You don't get to enjoy the fruits of your work until you've gone out and done that work. This is a very basic stuff right there. The enjoyment of something only comes when that thing actually arrives. But he's also got this other little piece in there. He makes a distinction between the perfect enjoyment of something and imperfect enjoyment of something. And that imperfect enjoyment of something comes maybe perhaps even long before whatever it is that you're enjoying is actually attained. It actually comes when you consider that you could do something. So, perfect enjoyment would be sitting down and eating that slice of pizza. Imperfect enjoyment would be thinking that you could go get a pizza and imagining that you could do that. Now, I think this is just his reflection on human beings and on how they observe themselves. But we look at this, I think if you didn't have that imperfect enjoyment of something whilst you're conceiving of the pursuit and whilst you're in the pursuit, we wouldn't actually be able to move towards it. We need to have something drawing us in there. And so this is an important part of us. This imperfect enjoyment of something that we could attain is not a glitch. It's not a sign that things are working improperly, but it is a sign that we can function properly with this. But as with all of these things, they can go wrong. They can be distorted. They can be used improperly. And so, how many of you have ever had a good idea that you've never followed up on? I will say that I certainly have had a plethora of good ideas that I've never followed up on. Well, how could we have gotten into that trap? How could we have gotten into the place where we have this wonderful idea, something that, when we conceive of it and when we contemplate it, should make our life better, make the world better, provide a certain amount of enjoyment when it's attained, and not go for it? Well, it's this imperfect enjoyment that can get you stuck, that can get you trapped, that you might allow yourself to be satisfied with just considering doing something useful, considering acquiring something useful, and not actually following through with the acquisition of that. You could allow yourself to be contented with imperfect enjoyment rather than setting yourself up for perfect enjoyment and actually accomplishing something useful. So, the trap is there that you might get stuck in your head. And the remedy could be something like making sure that you're not settling for the imperfect enjoyment, making sure that when you conceive of something that you could pursue, that you're not satisfied with just the momentary pleasure that that conception might bring, but rather uh, going through the most important and most difficult step, that being getting started. Sometimes people criticize theology for being impractical and unhelpful, but I think this little part of the Summa can show us a trap that any of us might fall into. This imaginary accomplishments. Don't get stuck in imaginary accomplishments. Go out and do real things. Don't be satisfied with just imagining good things, but do the most difficult step. That being the first step, and come to complete enjoyment of the things that you set out to do. And I am now coming to complete enjoyment of the opening rant that I set out to do, and so we can open up this stream to a little bit of feedback here. And I knew Mark would be pleased that I was going on a vacation. Ixnan recommends that you can catch up on Bishop Barron videos, which could be a useful use of your time. Yeah, well, there we go. A perennial problem there. But we're not dealing with the perennial problem of not having anybody to talk to. Kirk,
Hey,
what's up?
your speech kind of reminded me of a quote by Wayne Gretzky that goes, "Every shot that you don't take, you won't make."
Yeah, that's it's frankly a much simpler, more concise, and memorable way of saying the same thing. So that's
Yeah,
useful.
yeah. I mean, I think quotes from famous people who've done good things is valuable.
Yeah, yeah.
So I actually did have a question about Catholic theology, but it's not really related to what you were we were talking about, because I don't know if I really could expound much, because I basically agree with everything you said. Um, but
Sure. Well,
so
go ahead.
so
Go ahead. Ask your
I,
question.
I was recently watching an interview with Jonathan Peugeot on the Kurt Mungo podcast, and what Peugeot was saying was that there is a Christian mystic by the name of Saint Maximus, and he had an interesting perspective on the problem of the one and the many. And I was just curious if you could explain sort of Maximus's theology and how well regarded he is within the Catholic Church.
So we're talking Saint Maximus the Confessor, 8th century.
He was a Neoplatonist, so does that
Mark,
give you any clue?
Mark, don't. But sure. Yeah. So he is a canonized Catholic saint. We regard him as a saint. I think at that time, his writings were not well known in the West. He's a Eastern Roman Empire figure. He's writing in Greek, and the great universities of Europe had not yet been founded, so there was not much. There was not much communication between the two. I think Thomas Aquinas might have had access to a few of his writings and might have referenced them at a few points, but he didn't really occupy a kind of a central pillar of Thomas Aquinas's theology. He would be a bit more of a marginal figure, not somebody I think he would reject or anything, but didn't have nearly the sort of influence that Augustine, Gregory the Great, Dionysius, Jerome, Ambrose, all of those would have been much more influential. So all of that is a big lead up for me to say that I don't really know much about St. Maximus the Confessor.
Yeah, that's fair. The way Jim Mungo was, not Jim Mungo, sorry, Peugeot was explaining his theology, and tell me if this sounds compatible with Catholicism as far as you can tell, is something like the individual differentiation happens through like an emanationist process where sort of God is formless existence, and then differentiation happens the more formation you have.
I'm not sure. I mean, there's a way that we could understand talking about God as a formless of existence, as being beyond all forms, which would impose a limitation. So, some that bit, and then I just think we always need to be careful with the word emanation. Um, it's not necessarily a bad word, but I think over reliance on that could obscure God's active and intentional work of creation. Emanation just gives the sense that these things are flowing out from somewhere. It doesn't give much sense of the mind behind that. Whereas a creation, you've got the will of the creator behind that. And yeah, I mean the individuation is it's something that you have to handle more on a theoretical level than you do a practical one.
Well, it's so as the way he was explaining it was that when you differentiate, like, say, a cup from a table, like a cup from the table it stands on, that's because it is a formed existence, and so it's because of its formation, it's ultimately it doesn't have I mean, yes, it's all part of God's essence, but it's more formed than God transcends it, basically.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say it's a part of God's essence. Or yeah, part's not the word there. Yeah, I'd say it participates. You could say it participates in God's essence because participates in existence, and all existence comes from God. It is dependent on it for its sustenance there. Um, and it's to speak about being more formed. I'm not sure about that. That sounds a little bit funny because
He was just
like
putting
equates.
he was putting forth a tautology on purpose to show Kurt Jaimungal something extraordinarily obvious, which is in order to have a form and differentiate a form from another form, you would need a third state, which is neither of those forms, but the idea of formlessness as such, right? The material reality of formlessness would be mathematically non-existent, zero. In computer terms, it would be null, not merely zero.
Mhm.
It should be important to computer science, right? And that's why he did that, right? Because Jaimungal's a little on the slow side, right? And didn't really understand you have to resolve these things in some fashion. And the way you resolve them is by understanding that, of course, in order to have multiple things, you need a contrast of zero things, or the lack of thingness, in this case, form as such. Otherwise, the idea of form doesn't make any sense. That's why he initially put forth the tautology. You have to understand that conversation, which is utterly fascinating. So much fun.
Yeah.
Was really a masterclass in somebody very patient showing someone very 4-year-old mentality how something very basic works, right? And you can kind of tell that Jaimungal got a little wrapped up because he just couldn't understand that all language is metaphorical, despite the fact that it's actually impossible to fix that. Like, he tried. And Peugeot kept pointing out to him that you can't. And the fact that that's not completely obvious is a big problem. I don't know how you talk to people that don't understand that language is an abstraction and therefore is metaphorical, but I get that's why he started with the tautology. And there's still no such thing as Neoplatonism. Ridiculous. It's well documented that this isn't a ridiculous idea.
Okay, Mark, we've heard it. We don't need to go into it.
Okay.
I didn't go into it. I just said it's ridiculous.
Yeah, I think that's fair. So it's basically, the argument is that if you have two things that are different from each other, you have to have the concept of existence, which precedes those two individual forms of existence.
You have to have a bunch of other concepts. But the most important thing is to have the contrast of formlessness within the realm of existence. So you need existence, you see, because it's going to be a place for the forms, right? You need things that aren't forms within the existence, and then you need the absence of all form. That has to be within the existence. Like you need all of that. Otherwise, conceptually, there isn't one. It's much like saying, of course, we don't have free will, right? Which is already a nonsensical statement, because in order to conceive of free will, it must actually be. There's no two ways about it, right? By definition, you can't conceive of things that don't exist. That's actually impossible, right? And so
you could conceive of
obviously
things
there's
that
free
at
will.
least could exist, right? So we could imagine a 100 foot tall pile of gold somewhere in a swamp in South Carolina, right? But like a swamp in South Carolina exists, and gold exists, and the measurement of 100 feet exists. So we could imagine like a possible thing, but we're just smashing all that together in our imagination.
But
And then
the
we wouldn't really be able to
imagination,
tell the difference between 100 and 102 feet because it doesn't
but the
actually
imagination of the combination means that that combination, or at least all of its parts,
actually exist.
actually exist.
Yes,
Right.
yes, it's the point I was making. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's all of these things that if people had a normal education, or formation is a better term, nobody would ever talk like this ever. Like Kurt, the idea that there's a theory of everything is dumb right off the bat, and then it just goes downhill from there, right? And so if somebody's pursuing that seriously and not as a comedy sketch, then there's no end to the confusion, right? It's going to continue forever, which is why he's had all of these different people, all of them with their single theory of everything, none of which come close to even a tenth of the existence.
Well, it depends, because basically, as I understand it, a theory of everything is a theory that would unify gravity with the with the three other fundamental forces of nature, which are electromagnetism and strong weak nuclear
Now,
force.
that's unified
And-
field theory. That has a
Well,
specific name in science.
and particle physics.
That's not a theory of everything. That's unified field theory. Unified field theory can't be done. We know why. I don't know why they're still pursuing it. Kind of stupid, but then again, they're stupid, so that's fine. That's still not a theory of everything, because that wouldn't explain everything. In fact, it would explain less than half the things, approximately.
Yeah, because
So-
could it explain my dreams?
Well, no.
Yeah,
I mean,
you know.
obviously, physics can't explain psychological phenomena. But
Okay.
I thought, I
Well,
mean,
good, at least we have that. At least we have
and
that.
it's not,
Yeah.
and it's not a theory of everything, right?
I'm just saying
That's unified field
colloquially.
theory.
I'm just saying colloquially, that's what people call it.
Well, sometimes we have
No.
to do a little bit of move of resisting other people's colloquial usage of language, just like how, you know, at on this channel, in this little place here in the sphere, we don't really like the term modernism. I've ranted on this before, but you're always, you know, if you're sitting there criticizing modernism, you're saying that modernism is other people. All those people over there, they're all modernists. Then you're just continually giving the day to them, and they always have today. And postmodernism is even worse, because you're giving people tomorrow already. And that's just a horrible idea. I want to have tomorrow. I don't want to let somebody else have tomorrow. So yeah, and then it's always running away from you. So sometimes it is actually appropriate to sit down and refuse to use the language of silly people who don't have your interests in mind, and to instead just stick with your own. So you won't hear me talking about emotions or feelings very much. Sometimes I do slip into that, but I prefer passions and appetites, because I feel like I've got a much better grasp what that word means there.
Just read
So-
Aquinas. That's it.
But just read Aquinas is a it'll get you some things. And if you're going to have a theory of everything, it has to be a proper theory, right? So you're 100% correct when you say, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, and in the end, all things serve His purposes. That's not a theory. It's correct and it's good, and it's honestly it's enough for most people. Because all of this theorizing about forms and essences and matter, and whether or not there could be something that's entirely formless and pure matter, which there can't, and all of that stuff is just it's just a way of speaking about these things with extremely precise tools. But usually you don't need them. Usually you just need ordinary tools of communication and cooperation. So.
Yeah. Well, I also was curious, Mark. You mentioned the idea that a unified field theory is silly, but I was looking at a proposal by, I'm thinking the name of a physicist. I think the name is Neil Turek, where he was saying that you could unify gravity with the three other fundamental forces of nature if you represent the quantum states not as vectors in Hilbert space, but as vectors in Krein space, because if you do that, then you could basically have the math such that you would not get negative probabilities for quantum states, and so you could unify general relativity and quantum physics.
Right. These guys are all wrong. Okay. Everybody's done 3 of them. Everyone. There's multiple theories on how to unify 3 all over the place for decades. This is not new. This is not interesting. He's not the first to unify those 3. There's a simple reason why. They're using 2 entirely different types of math. Period. End of statement. Full stop. And there is no way to reconcile those types of math because they use fundamentally different, what you would probably, maybe correctly, but maybe incorrectly, refer to as logical systems. They're not logical systems. That's just math people being retarded, but that's what it would look like to the layperson, is a logical system. In other words, there's a set of rules, right? Which, as you pointed out, he's solving one mismatch between the 2 rule sets of the 2 different types of mathematics, right? And the bottom line is that the difference between particle physics and quantum physics is called scaling. And when you change it to scale, you change the rules. And if you change the rules, you could not have a unified math to explain them. It's that simple. They actually know this. This is also hinted at by all kinds of previous minds who were much smarter than any of these retarded idiots, like Heisenberg and Gödel, right? So if Gödel is correct, and Gödel is clearly mathematically correct, right, then you're not getting it. It's not happening, right? You're getting
we actually
but you're not getting a unified field theory ever. Period. End of statement. This isn't hard. It doesn't have to be hard. The fact that these guys are very good salesmen and are marketing snake oil to you and you're buying it is a different problem, right? It's like, oh, they have PhDs. They would never fool us and steal money from the taxpayers. Well, Sabine Hassenfelder has something very different to say about that without even unified field theory. They're doing it in particle physics, right? They're still trying to invent a new particle physics. We don't even have a stable particle physics, according to these idiots. And then these other idiots are like, well, no, we can unify. Which is it, guys? It can't be both, right? It's got to be one or the other. And because you unify the wrong particle physics, then you haven't done anything. And it should be obvious that these guys are just full of it. But whatever. Maybe it's not. I don't know.
I'm not fully sure about Gödel, because my understanding is what the Gödel incompleteness theorem says is that there's true but unprovable theorems within a axiomatic system that's capable of expressing piano arithmetic, but that has nothing to do with physical math generally.
Any formal system can either be consistent or complete, but it can't be both. In other words, the margin matters. That's what he's talking about. It's that simple. And so for anything you try to put in mathematics, you have one of two conditions. Either it's complete or it's consistent. It cannot be both at the same time. Anything. It doesn't matter if you're starting with math. It doesn't matter if you're starting with physics. It's a limitation of mathematical systems as such, and it is axiomatic.
And that's an interesting thing to ponder a little bit, because these axiomatic mathematical systems are something that we create, right? And you know what? They got their uses, right? Mark has spent a good amount of his time dealing with mathematical systems that are running, contentedly on our magical rune sketched sand, and we use these tools and we could make good use of them. But it would actually be the case that if our logical systems could contain, let's say, the entirety of creation in it, that we would be God. Right. And like the because our, we would have the capacity to contain all of creation within, the structures of our mind. And if you've ever been at a four-way stop sign with other people, you should know that that's not the case.
Exactly.
I mean, yeah, of course we can't have all knowledge of everything, but what I was specifically referring to was something that would explain gravity with the other fundamental forces of nature.
They don't have a definition of gravity at all, Kirk. They don't even have one. They have like 6, but they don't have one. So we're light years away from even being able to start that project, because they're lying to you. They're snake oil salesmen. They want taxpayer money. And fair enough. I mean, maybe we should give them some to keep them out of regular society. Otherwise, they'll comment on politics and destroy the internet. Oh, wait, that might have already happened. Damn.
Yeah,
everybody else is commenting on politics, and it's doing nothing to slow the internet down. In fact, it seems to be speeding it up.
It is. Exactly. Yeah.
And we actually independently solved this morning in the Peterson meetup group. Because you can't find completeness by looking at the things beneath you. So,
wait, are you trying to say that we're in the middle of creation and not on top?
Yes.
Oh,
it's almost like we're between heaven and earth or something. Yeah. Maybe we should do something in that situation that would be useful.
Yeah, like go to church, Mark.
We just got to bring them together, Father.
Boy, where is the bringing together place? I couldn't possibly imagine where the bringing together place
You don't need a bringing together place. It's everywhere. That's part of the problem. You guys are so focused on the one thing. You're missing all the good things. But
I don't know. I spend a lot of time not in the church, but it's good to have the place where the veil is at its thinnest be a place that you regularly make contact.
You act like I've never been to a church. My goodness, you people.
Regular contact, that regular exercise, baby. That's what you need.
I had a priest flown in who did mass in my living room a bunch of times. It's fine.
Yeah, well, okay, and that's like saying you brushed your teeth once. That doesn't do you any good. You need to keep doing it.
It's more than once. It was most of the week. The rest of the time we were in a basilica. Like, man.
Anyway. Yeah, the point is that we're not God, and if we were God, then we would be able to come up with a complete system of physics. But since we only have the tools of logic and mathematics, we can't exclude things that are not. We can't include things that are not in themselves reducible to mathematics.
So, God is not subject to Gödel. That's all we need to do. We need to just tell everybody.
Oh, that's good, Mark. I'm going to steal that. I don't know what situation I'm going to steal it, but it's going to be really useful.
We're just going to get it skywritten across beaches and stuff, and people can puzzle over it on their own. It'll be great.
Yeah. Well, one thing I think, and I'm curious for your perspective, Father, as someone who I believe you've said you like music in the past, at least like some classical music, is I find that my connection to God through art and especially music, I love classical music, and I find that very spiritually uplifting.
Yes, yes, absolutely. I think so. There's another chink in the materialist's armor right there. Why does the harmony and the beauty and the proportion of these things have that kind of effect on us? Where is the evolutionary utility of that? Um, so if we want to continue dunking on materialism, which is always an acceptable, like they can never be dunked on enough there. And it's yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting, like music itself, right? Because you learn a little bit about physics, right? And then the physics of how music works and how wavelengths work. And so, the standard A note is the A440. That's 440 oscillations per second. And we're just defining that as an A, and we can use that because we got to set an arbitrary point somewhere. Well, if you want an octave lower, that's 220 hertz. An octave lower than that is 110 hertz. And I think we're getting kind of near the A range of where humans could do, but you could go down to 55 hertz. And at that point, after that, I don't want to do the math because now if you want, the harmonious notes, the easiest harmony and the first harmony that most people come up with after they get to the octave is they get to the fifth, right? And the fifth is really interesting. A fifth up from an A. I got to imagine the piano here is an E. And when you've got an E, that the wavelength of that is, for every one oscillation of the A note, you're going to have two oscillations of the E note. And so the E is going to squeeze in between the wavelengths of the A. And then if you want a fourth, that's another very harmonious one. It's a 2/3 ratio. And so you can start, building up these ratios here. And when you could and like the Greeks figured this out, and they did some kind of measurement on the strings and how taut they were. And then you think you could just go around the circle of fifths, right? Or backwards on the circle of fourths. It doesn't really matter because it's the same cadence. It'll take you over all 12 notes of the chromatic scale, and you should just be able to scale those things up. But it doesn't work if you just start from A440 and do the math. And I don't remember the exact mathematical reasons why, but if you were to tune everything on your piano using whole integer ratios from A440, you would get to certain keys where the fifths were not the right proportion from each other. And so that was a problem with keyboard instruments until they came up with mathematical formulas to make well temperament, and then that was a step onto the kind of tuning that we have for pianos nowadays. And I think that right there shows us why it just kind of like a mathematical, pathway into this, and why that should feel so human for us. That so much of the stuff, at first glance just seems so, regular and easy and predictable, but you get to the end of what you think you're doing, it doesn't work the way you thought it did at the beginning, and then you've got to grow in deeper understanding and a bit of humility there, because you found out that whole integer ratios are not the foundation of all music, and that there's even something underneath that that's eternally not subject to what we think it should be, but is its own thing. So So it's a very human thing right there, our music and our encounter with music, because it's got plenty of regularity with some weird stuff right at the edges that a lot of people never actually have to encounter, but that are there and change things. And that's kind of what life is like.
Yeah, I mean, I like I like music. I've never really thought about it in that like deep mathematical way. I just listen to a good song and enjoy it. I mean, um, yeah. Do you have a favorite classical musician by any chance? I think mine would probably be a tie between Wagner and Mendelssohn.
Well, so that's the thing when we get to this part of the conversation here is where I have to reveal part of my upbringing here, and part of my upbringing is that I'm not that well acquainted with classical music, and I'm a bit of a bore when it comes to it. So I can pick out some Mozart pieces. I can pick out some Bach pieces. I could pick out some of the pieces that Bishop plays on the piano, and I'm like, okay, that one's a Chopin. Is it a promenade or polonaise? One of those things. But I'm not super well educated on it, and I find myself much more at home with the progressive rock movement of the 1970s. And if you don't believe me, just ask Mark, because he's watched me listen to music before.
Can confirm.
Yeah.
Insisted on yes, classical. Yeah, the early yes.
Early yes. It's all good.
Which is great. Well, it's great. Get early yes, it's not good. It's great.
Yeah.
Good. Oh.
But so now I'll tell you that I am trying to grow in my appreciation of classical music. And I'm driving around with the classical music station on it. It's not just to make fun of the hosts, even though the hosts are just consistently delightful in ways I can't really articulate. And I think they would drive me crazy if I had to do anything with them. But as Minnesota Public Radio classical music hosts, perfect, exactly what I want. So
Yeah.
But anyway, to answer your question, Stravinsky's Rite of Spring.
So okay. If you want one with the
Prague, piece of classical music.
yeah, I was gonna say if you want one with the biblical theme, Mendelssohn's Elijah does have biblical themes in it.
Is that an oratorio?
I believe so. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, that's my mom.
Well, you gotta keep the fourth commandment there, buddy.
Beethoven's fifth, sixth, and ninth. That's all you need. Although I am warming up to Eroica a bit. That's Ethan's fault.
See, I actually went to a symphony in DC that did the ninth, and like there were definitely like parts I was kind of tuned into it, but I don't think I'm there yet. Like I don't think I'm ready for it,
The sixth, the blue
No,
label.
that one's a Fantasia favorite right there. So, that was with all of the fawns and Zeus throwing the bolts of lightning out of heaven. So that one, it's like if it was in Fantasia, I know it very well. Other than that, I'm kind of useless. So
You do Vivaldi's Four Seasons.
that one, yeah. No, around November, all of a sudden I start hearing.
How about everything Stravinsky, because he's just awesome. But what about Rimsky?
I've heard Stravinsky that I didn't like.
Really? Oh, interesting.
It was I got taken to the symphony here, and it was like some piece he wrote during wartime for 9 musicians, and it was just really jarring and experimental. And it was like, okay, this is too experimental for me, which is how you know you've crossed a line.
That's crossing the line. If you
I'm hardly a Philistine when it comes to music.
If you like early yes and you don't like crossing the line, yeah, it's a pretty Rimsky-Korsakov Scheherazade. There's a transcendent piece of music right there.
Mm-hmm.
Like Stravinsky's Firebird, like that's another just transcendent piece right there.
I was talking with somebody who knows a lot more about classical music than I do recently. And that's the scale I'm comparing myself to, right? Is somebody who's getting his doctorate in organ performance. Um,
Oh, okay.
and is quite good and usually has reliably good taste. Um, his take on Stravinsky is that Stravinsky wrote in every genre. So
Oh,
whoever you
maybe.
are, you should be able to find something in Stravinsky that you like. And I just accepted it on his authority because he's heard a lot more of it than I have. But like the Stravinsky was going to get into me because my mom would put on Fantasia so that I would take a nap. I didn't nap. I just sat there and watched the television. So even to this day, I don't nap very much. And like, what's the part that I'm going to be most dialed into? The volcanoes and the dinosaurs.
Yeah.
Like, not that complicated. I'm a 4-year-old boy. I know what I like. Volcanoes and dinosaurs. Let's go.
Well, I was also curious, Father. So you mentioned this relationship between music and math, and I was also specifically I was referring to you mentioning like the whole numbers and the symmetry and stuff. And I was curious. A friend of mine was recently recommending I read Gödel, Escher, Bach by Douglas Hofstadter. And I was curious if you would recommend that book as well, because I've heard he explores the relationship between music and math and symmetry and all that.
I've heard good things about that book. Showing that. And if he's really, I haven't read it myself, but if he's really taking it seriously, there's going to be like all of this stuff that's just really neat and fits into place. But if he's got Gödel in there, it'll be like, there's always going to be the margin, as Peugeot would say. There's always going to be things that don't fit into the system. So and that's where the fun happens, because if music has been solved, then we should just have computers do it the same way that we have them do our arithmetic, because arithmetic is like with whole numbers and stuff, like that's solved basically. So we may as well just have the computers do it.
Yep.
Because they can logic far more consistently than I can.
Computer
Okay.
confirm.
I don't know. In Fantasia, you've got the Magician's Apprentice bit, and you've got the Night on Bald Mountain.
Toccata and
Also,
Fugue in
and-
D minor. You've got excerpts from the Nutcracker.
Mhm.
You've got the Dance of the Hours. Beethoven Sixth, Rite of Spring. I'm sure there's something I'm missing, but
Well, they had classical music sprinkled throughout the children's cartoons, right? So
yeah, really the Merry Melodies. I think that's what they called it.
the Merry Melodies and the Looney Tunes. Yeah.
Yeah. It was just, I think it was just out of copyright by that point, so they could freely broadcast it without getting
Well,
into
yeah,
trouble.
you can find Mel Blanc doing a Daffy Duck's Rhapsody to a Hungarian Rhapsody 2. And then the classic What's Opera Doc, Bugs Bunny and Elmer Fudd from Wagner.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, they stole a bunch of Wagner too.
And then Hey Arnold, the 90s, had their contribution to this. The one where they went to the opera and Arnold fell asleep and dreamed the whole thing in his head. It's got it's got a lot of Carmen in there, I think. Can't remember who wrote that, but so just
I just remember they used habanera in the movie Up. So
I wonder how much of that is connected to the fact that Gen X is not having the same problems as the other generations, despite being, we'll say, under the same boomer rubric, which there is something to, even though talking like that is completely counterproductive.
Yeah. So you're looking at what? What are you looking at, Mark? I didn't understand that.
Well, the millennials and the Gen Zs will complain about the boomers ruining the world, and the Gen Xers never do that. But if the boomers ruin the world and the Gen Xers are not all doing great, right? Then why aren't they complaining? And right, and I think maybe that's it. Like maybe the formation from the cartoons with all these extra things that were in them is holding things together in a way that that the later generations don't have because it wasn't in their cartoons, or it wasn't in their cartoons as much.
So you're tying this all in with the competency crisis and maybe a general sense of immaturity
Yep.
where it doesn't belong.
Yeah. Well, yeah, in years in which way past, which should have been. I mean, seriously though, like it's funny that Kirk brought up Kurt Jaimungal and Jonathan Peugeot, because if you want to see somebody being very nice to a 4-year-old in a much
very
older body,
large 4-year-old,
look no further than that particular one. Because, man, it's really good for that. It's yeah, it's a bit like watching Andrew Wilson be super patient with complete retard. Like Andrew Wilson in trigonometry. That was another one. It's just like someone very patient who's obviously got his stuff together, and children, right? Just 2 children. And
okay. Kurt Jaimungal is exploring theoretical physics, consciousness, AI, and God. What could possibly go right?
it's so weird too, because none of the people he has on know anything about any of those subjects at all, which is hysterical to me. I'm like most of them don't even have degrees that are relevant to the topic they're actually discussing. Occasionally they do, but then like one of them's Eric Weinstein, and it's like, oh well, never mind. Like he just wants to rewrite physics. He has no interest in making it work with anything else. It's a different problem. So
maybe
Also-
Gen X has on average a greater internal locus of control compared to later generations, which is a really useful thing to have.
that would be true if you knew how to poetically inform the world and knit things together, because you had exposure to this at whatever level, right? Because if the different stratums of society, the different classes, are all growing up watching cartoons and getting something different out of it, not based on their age, but based on their socioeconomic conditions. But they're still getting this sense for how to put the world together, then mission accomplished. And I don't see how that could go any other way, but hey, that's just me. So
And so we just don't have good enough cartoons nowadays. That's what's going on.
I mean, it's not just cartoons. It's pretty much, we're flooded out of pretty much everything. I mean, so if you tune in on Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern on Navigating Patterns, interestingly, my life is very strange. I just wrote the notes for this because I don't know why, but that's what happened. Mere minutes before this began, I was pecking away on the competence. That's what we're talking about on Friday. You get these floods, and you get this reinvention, right, through mimicry. It's not, it's not like necessarily deliberate. Sometimes it's deliberate, but mostly it's just mimicry. Like, oh, we had cartoons. We need new cartoons done by new people, right? And then it just all goes disastrously wrong because the pioneers were pioneers and you're not. Like, you're mimicking, so you can't also be a pioneer. Right. And so you run into this problem of degradation almost immediately. And so because everything's flooded, right? Literacy got flooded, and now people are just misusing the language left, right, and center. They don't even understand that all language is metaphorical. Which is just, I don't know how. I have no idea. Anyway, right. And then for every piece of media or everything that we do, right? It's like, oh, well, you used to be able to buy really good solid hard drives that lasted a long time. You can't anymore 'cause they don't make them. Right? And then it's that way for everything. Like as things progress through time and on a larger time scale of decades and centuries, right? Because different things progress at different time scales, everything's degrading because no one's revivifying anything at this point, right? And so, yeah, cartoons are a great example. Like you have this wonderful thing in cartoons. Effectively, it's a fundamentally unprofitable idea that Disney makes work anyway, right? Like most businesses. And he figures out a way to get it funded effectively, and they fund it, and it works. And it works to hold together stuff from the 1920s, right? Because that's when the idea formation for Disney's in the 1920s and before.
Hmm.
And so that is getting carried forward all the way into the 80s, basically, before it was pretty much off the air, if my memory serves. And so that's a long time, right? But then they start replacing it, and cartoons don't get good again until what did they?
The Lion
What was
King.
the? No, oh no, Lion King's, but no, like serial cartoon. You know the way Bugs Bunny was. At
Oh,
least for
okay.
me, Bugs Bunny was on all the time, right? It was on all the time, like every day, right? Um, what was the Spielberg thing that he did that was actually really good?
Animaniacs.
Animaniacs, thank you. Right. But Animaniacs isn't, it's still not Disney. Like, I mean, Spielberg's good and all, but he ain't Disney. Like, nobody's Disney. That's the problem. We don't have another Disney. That's part of the problem, right? We don't have another Mel Blanc because you need them both. You can't. It's not one man. It's not a hero's journey. Campbell's just destroyed the world with a stupid idea that was never correct, and nobody noticed because nobody listens. Just listen to the idiocy. Oh, he's an idiot. Oh, okay. Nobody listens. And so, you need Disney, you need these other guys coming together in this way, and we're busy flattening the world, and that's how you get comic books, and comic books is how you get Crumb there. Horrific. And it just destroys everything, and then you get The Watchmen, which is trying to elevate comic books, right? But you get one of those once, right? And then it collapses again almost immediately. The graphic novels go nowhere. Right?
But Watchmen was an Alan Moore thing,
Alan Moore,
and
which
he's
is
basically
ironic.
just evil. So
Yeah, it's ironic because he's actually a bad guy, right? So, but it's bizarre that, I mean, Watchmen is excellent. The story of Watchmen is terrible, but the graphic novel is really, really good. But then it like no one else does anything like that again. That's part of the issue. Is no one's able to do anything equivalent because they don't have the talent, ironically. But talent and goodness are not the same thing. And Alan Moore's not good. There's nothing good about him. There's nothing good about the story he's telling. He's basically he's elevating his own graphic novel by denigrating all the comic books that he allegedly loves. That's his tactic. And it's like, well, I mean, I gotta respect good work. So fair enough, right? But what's the majority of comics? It's manga. It's like, well, that really didn't go well, though, did it? That's not great.
Mhm.
I'm not saying it's like horrible or anything, but also it's certainly not, it's not Watchmen quality, that's for sure. And I mean, guys, it's not about a high point. It's about that was better than a bunch of other things. It was an elevation of comics to a level of storytelling that a mere comic can't do. That's why it's a graphic novel and not just a comic series, right?
Mhm.
It's also a stable story, but it does that at the expense of all previous comics. It's essentially a parasitic work.
I mean, you know the story about how Watchmen came to be, right? DC had acquired a bunch of properties from another defunct comic book publishing house. It was never as big
Yeah.
as Marvel or
Right.
or DC there, and they they told Alan Moore to introduce all of these characters to their new fans. And when they saw the outline of his story, they're like, "Okay, you can write that, but you were not using any of our characters that we just acquired because the universe is going to be unusable after that." And when
That's
you read
right.
The Watchmen and see how many, like, oh, the comedian
Yeah.
dies right away, you know, and
Yeah.
and
Right, because it's subversive.
be great because you would have, you know, the Patriot being dead. You would
Yep.
have the question would be dead,
Yeah,
and Captain Adam would be on Mars not talking to anybody. You can't use any of these characters anymore.
That's right. He did that on purpose because he's a jerk. Like, yes, but also he's a genius and he has a talent. And not only can he actually tell a story, which, I mean, the guys in the comics can tell a story until somebody else comes along and rewrites it, but that's not much of a story now, is it? Right? And then, oh, by the way, they can either do beginnings or endings, but none of them can do both. And any actual retard can do the middle, which might be part of where fan fiction comes from. And Second Story, even though I go back and forth with her, it's just some of the stuff she says is brilliant, and some of it's so wrong. It's like, I don't even know how you can put the good stuff together with the conceptions. But she talks about fan fiction ruining writing. She's absolutely 1,000% correct, of course, because it's another flood. And you know, I mean, you can be really cynical about it, which would be fair, and go right down to Robert Bloch and H.P. Lovecraft and say these guys and Weird Tales and all that, the pulp stuff, is also the flood and degradation of literature as such, right? They're not aesthetic choices. If you think what I'm pinning on is that aesthetics, you're way off base. I'm talking about the patterns and the structures of graphic, the whole idea of a graphic novel right, is an upgrade from a comic book, right? And comic books are thin and they have very few pages, and they're made with the cheapest possible material, and they degrade almost immediately, just like Weird Tales, just like the dime novels, right? There's all these patterns, right, that have been degrading literature through the flood since basically the printing press, because these things start almost immediately, right? But they take a while to get going, and they take a while to actually manifest, and that's part of the problem, is that when you look at what people are doing with it, because Alan Moore's very talented, but also very evil, right? And so, just like Neil Gaiman, Gaiman, I already knew this about him decades ago. I knew all about Gaiman because I was in the hippie crowd in Boston. So everybody knew what he was up to. That wasn't unusual. That's why they liked his work. They didn't like his work for any of his aesthetics or his storytelling. Actually, they liked his work because they thought he was one of them, and they were all also perverts who very much skirted the line of consent while screaming consent all the time. Incidentally, really weird coincidence, I'm sure. That's why they liked him. They didn't like him for any other reason, because his work sucks, quite honestly. Gaiman's terrible. Moore is a genius, but he's just an evil genius, and that we've lost that trope. We don't recognize evil. I recognize evil geniuses. I grew up with that trope. That's like the Gen X trope, was the evil genius. Like, we're very suspicious of these people. Like, oh, you have a PhD. All right, let me back up. Let me gird my loins, get on guard. Now let's proceed, right? Because, because I know. I mean, I know personally, my father has a PhD. He was a total jerk when he got his PhD. I gotta say, he'd admit that in a heartbeat. He knows he was, right? And but he worked for it at least. Like, he worked while he was in college. No scholarship grant, garbage nonsense. That did not happen for him. So good on him. And now he was able to correct from having a PhD and being a jerk because of that, I think. So,
Yeah. There's something interesting I've just been pondering on. I'm not sure it's ready to start a a stream off yet. That's a really high bar. I got to clear for my ideas. I think about a lot of the things that went wrong in the church in the 1950s and 60s, specifically with personnel, clergy, that really hit their zenith in the 70s and 80s, 90s, and didn't start to get systematically addressed until 2002, when all of a sudden everything changed. When I look at the church in the 1950s, you've got Fulton Sheen on TV. You've got the churches are all full, and part of your Sunday experience is that, well, we need to differentiate ourselves from the godless communists. And so if you're going to be a respectable member of American society, then you need to have a church that you go to, because the godless communists, they don't. And, even the most progressive and skeptical should be able to find a home in the Unitarian Universalists, right? Because they hardly believe anything. So we've got that, right? And none of that's actually so wrong that we couldn't have anything to do with it. Next month in September, I'm going to go to the beatification of Fulton Sheen. He'll be one step away from being Saint Fulton Sheen. So that's going to be a fun trip. I'm looking forward to it. And him being on TV is a part of that whole, 1950s Catholic moment. Some people call it the Catholic moment, when, Catholics were no longer just a suspiciously treated minority in the United States, but we're starting to, have a little bit more mainstream acceptance there. So, there's the seminaries are full, the churches are full, we're building schools, all that stuff. Everything just seems to be coming up roses at that point. And that's actually a really dangerous position to be in. Being ascendant is actually a really dangerous position to be in, because, there starts to be a number of different incentives that might draw a young man to the seminary. They might be a little bit on the ambitious side, and a little bit of ambition, if it's for the right things, or if it could be tempered by other forces, but if that's all you have, is ambition, or just this desire to have status that's stable, right? That's a thing that you can 100% get into if you've got the Catholic priesthood, right? And it was a high status, at least in certain communities there, and so that should actually be a magnet for psychopaths, right there, right? If you've got if you do this, you will have status there, and I think when we look at how quickly things broke down, say starting in '68, when things really started to fall off a cliff, it's because the personnel had gotten a little out of hand, and infiltrated by a number of men who weren't there because they wanted to be good priests. And that's an advantage we have now. It's not 100%. There might still be guys who just want the instant status of priesthood, but it's not quite like it was, right? So definitely not late 50s, early 60s, that kind of status right there.
That's the problem.
I think, and this is, here's the cherry on top, Mark, is I think all the people who are psychopaths just want that instant status, they all just become trannies now.
Hopefully. Yeah, it was a number of years ago now. My driving around with my uncle, and he's like, "You know what I hate? I hate those people that put the baseball caps on backwards." He's like, "That should be illegal. We should stop them." My uncle, man, he's a trip. Everybody loves my Uncle Al. He's awesome. And I was like, "I don't know, Al. I think it's fine." And he's like, "What?" And I'm like, "Well, we know who we can do away with when the violence starts. Pop, pop, pop. These people are useless. Just get rid of them." It is that strong signal, oh, okay, well, at least you know where people stand and you can ignore them as required. And part of the problem that we're having is, and this is, unfortunately, my my dear friend Jonathan Peugeot is completely missing the point of the margin, which is the margin's gotten too big and fashionable, and now there's too many people in it, right? And so he says that the center, the margin's becoming the center. No, 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 no. The margin's just too big, and the herd needs to be culled. That's all. And we could do that very easily, but nobody wants to, set down rules and say, no, you can't have blue hair. It causes obesity. No, you can't, pierce your body in random places and still have a decent job. Like, no, you can't just dress however you want. No, your hair can't be random and, still work with the public. No, none of these things are acceptable. Right. And then once that works, we have to reverse the damage done by all the freaking, boomer tech bros and the Gen X tech bros for that matter, because they continued a lot of that nonsense by copying the Bill Gates, who was always a bad guy, like all from day one. If you didn't know he was a bad guy, you don't know what good and bad is even a little bit. Like that guy is complete just jerk from moment one, and a backstabber, and just all the stories, right? And you've got a Steve Jobs who succeeds in spite of his failures, mostly because of who he knows, basically. But then what does he do? He wears turtlenecks everywhere, right? And tries to be like an everyman. And he's not. Like it just doesn't, he's not though. Like it doesn't work. I mean, you call him a genius or whatever. He's also very difficult to work with. Nobody ever had a nice thing to say about working with Steve Jobs.
It's interesting that you say this, Mark. You can get to Aquinas's treatise on modesty, and there's it's a part of the virtue of temperance, right? It's kind of a general umbrella virtue for everything that's under temperance, but doesn't need its own like special virtue, right? So you've got, for all your basic appetites, you've got a virtue to make sure that those are properly integrated and oriented, right? And you get to modesty, and it covers, outward movements that don't have a really powerful appetite attached to them, but there's a lot of useful things right there. And so you get like modesty in speech, having modesty in play. You get the right amounts of these things, that you do these things properly, but you're not taking excessive pleasure. And even, it could also be a sin to be deficient in mirth. If you're a party pooper, when the occasion calls for relaxation and enjoyment, then you're actually sinning against temperance right there. So that's a useful little Aquinas fact there. When it comes to the modesty in outward dress, and I think he's got men in mind when he says this, but it's like, well, you need to be dressing your station, right?
Right. That's a bigger deal.
Yeah. Yeah. And he's like, now for a nobleman, if he needs to do penance, then like he can put on sackcloth and ashes, but he should not put on sackcloth and ashes unless he's actually doing the penance, right? You can't just wear that to put on airs. So he would say that, like, well, okay, if you're a member of the nobility, you need to dress in finer clothes because, like, that's your station in life. And if you're a cleric, you need to wear clerical garb. If you're a peasant, or if you got a guild, you do all of that. He spends more, just as much time on that as he does, on women's clothing. So he seems to, consider them more or less, equal right there. So yeah, there, and then modesty, right? Modesty has two integral parts. You have honestia, and I'm leaving that in the Latin because it doesn't translate neatly into the English honesty there, which is just sort of like this desire to have honorable human behavior that other people can recognize and engage with, and shamefacedness, where if you're caught out in animalistic sort of behavior, that you'll feel ashamed, and that'll draw you away from that. And those are the two integral parts of the virtue of temperance, the carrot and the stick there. And so, what we're dealing with when we've got, everybody saying, I'm just going to wear a hooded sweatshirt to my job, and everybody celebrating that, is that we've got a breakdown of public order, because these
Right.
aren't necessarily, people who want to behave dishonorably, but they don't have like the signal to orient around. And it's like, well, hey, Mark Zuckerberg, he wore a hooded sweatshirt and that's what he wants us to do. So I guess, like, are you going to show up in a 3-piece suit to code? You would really stand out if you did. So it's a breakdown of public order that we're talking about here. And I don't know how to fix it.
Yeah, no, I mean, and it's more about what you're trying to embody and why. And if you're not dressing professionally, then you're not taking what you're doing for work seriously. And
According to the standards of your profession. So if my mechanic's a little rougher, like, I don't really care if he's got a tattoo, right?
yeah, but like if he's in a suit, it's a problem.
Yeah. So he's got to be in
Right.
mechanical garb that could get stained with oil, and
But if
has
you're
lots of
if you're
pockets.
behind a desk, that's different. And if you're in front of the public, that's also like uniforms are important, right? And when you mix that, when you just dress sort of casually, it really wrecks pretty much everything. I mean, one of the things, of course, I hated it at the time. Catholic high school, man, it's suit, coat, and tie every day, and they would like actually kick you out, like for real. You had to have dress shoes, the suit coat, the tie, the whole 9 yards. And basically we would, I think very few exceptions, we're actually not allowed to take off our jackets, our suit jackets at all. Like that was not a thing you could do. You could do it like at lunch, I think. You could do it, when we weren't in a class
But
technically.
when it was business time,
But
it was time for business, right?
Yeah. It was pretty severe. And I think that's the, you know, people started to follow that like casual attitude, right? And yeah, I mean, of course, Jobs never looks like an everyman. First of all, he looks like an asshole because you can't, when you're all asshole, it just comes screaming through every part of you. That's the only explanation for him. But he's trying to be like, that's as low as he'll go, basically, is really what it is. And that's the thing is anybody could buy a turtleneck. They were pretty cheap. Right. But poor people would never buy a turtleneck because they weren't that cheap. Like there was a floor to those. Right. And so, it was just good to see he was willing to go, basically. But he was doing that to thumb his nose at the executives with ties who needed his stuff, or who you could sell stuff to. 'Cause
There's
he
also
sold
a
stuff.
flattening impulse in there, isn't there?
Yeah. Yeah, because he's
some of that.
subverting the system. Because he's adopted. And so he's angry at everything, basically. It's too bad. But he has a lot of power based on the family he was adopted into and the connections he has. Much like Bill Gates. Like Bill Gates just has overweighted power because his mother's on the board of IBM. And like he wasn't poor at all. Right? So these are not stories of people like rising from poverty to become well. None of those guys are that. None of them. Zuckerberg, none of them. Zero of them. Not even close. It's not. They're not even middle class. They're upper middle class at the lowest. But they're also very well connected, which really matters more. In essence, it's not how much you have. It's how many people have more. Right? Like one extra zero. Right? Your boss should have one extra zero than you have effectively. Right? That's when the scale changes. Everything else, you are all equal, right? You have a manager at a company, even if he's a director and he's making 6 figures, and you're making 6 figures, whatever. You're all the same, right? But the guy who's making $1 million is not the same as the guy making 6 figures, right? It's just not. It's a different lifestyle. So if you are connected with those guys, that's a whole different. Like everything changes at that point, and that's what happened with those guys in that particular time and place. Part of it was just the sparse population, and part of it was just what was happening around, right? And that was the newest part of the United States is still that part of California. right? So
I don't know. I kind of feel like South Fargo's pretty new. Nothing there's more than about 15 years old.
yeah. Well, and like where Sally is newer to some extent, but like California is where people actually want to be and can live, without technology. So
You
why they have a
can, you
homeless
could, yeah. That's why the homeless people are there.
Yeah.
They can survive.
Yeah.
If the people of Fargo didn't bring the homeless people indoors every winter, then all of the homeless people would die.
Yeah. Right. You always have that option. The nuclear option is available. Yeah. And that's actually super super important to see how tech basically brought down a bunch of companies. But tech was led by IBM. So it's a weird story because IBM used to make mechanical calculators, mechanical adding machines, all mechanical. And once you understand where that business model came from, which embarrassingly I didn't understand until a few years ago, actually.
I can't believe it, Mark.
For all the history I
Changes
knew,
everything I ever thought about you.
I had so much computer history, and that was the one piece that I actually ended up realizing how I don't know anything about this. This changes every. But it's interesting because once I got that picture, I was like, oh well, then now a bunch of things make a lot more sense, right? Because like, why are people chasing IBM? Why? Because IBM's a very old company, as it turns out, and they've never changed their business or their business model, which is super unusual, right? They have the same business model. All they did was change how they deliver their product. It went from purely mechanical to transistor based, right? With a brief transition in electronic land. But it's hard to know if that's a good thing ultimately, because as near as I can tell, that pattern's going to run out real quick. It probably doesn't have much longer left, actually.
Everything seems to be running out.
AI will kill it for sure. Oh, my I was going to post a video on my channel, but actually all my videos are locked on my disk box, which stopped working mysteriously. Man, these things happen. We had a big power outage. I shut it down cleanly, and yet it still didn't come back. And let's see. There are half a dozen individual computer systems broken that meant it took me 3.5 days, which has never happened before in my life, to troubleshoot the actual problem. And that's with AI level research where you can just actually, I need the the technical specifications on this, and it can actually find it, almost certainly with very little effort. Right? It used to take hours. There were so many bugs, and there's so many bugs in so many individual places. And I was just like, I cannot believe that booting a computer could even have this many, because I know how to boot a computer. I've written boot code. It ain't that hard. It's a jumping strike. You can write that in assembly off the top of your freaking head, man. There's nothing. It doesn't work.
I can't.
Doesn't work. Doesn't work at all. And I'm just like, how can this have this? And it's all different bugs. And I'm like, I cannot believe. And Windows 11 doesn't work with virtual machines because something's broken in VirtualBox. And that alone, I mean, I think I burned 6 hours before I figured that out. I'm like, so I have to go over to the old Windows 7 laptop, and then everything works fine. I was like, well, I wish I had known that 5 hours ago. But who would guess? Who would guess? Because it's a virtual machine. It should just work. Like, why would it automatically corrupt your disk? What good is it if it does that? There's no point running VirtualBox on a Windows 11 machine at all, because it's non-functional. It will corrupt data randomly, and there's no rhyme or reason to it, at least on a USB attached device. Why that exists, I don't know. Is it a problem with the versions? I don't know. And and normally, to be fair, I almost always only use the Windows 7 machine, but I was building a new FreeBSD box because I don't have one, and so it was a mess. I couldn't figure out why the FreeBSD would boot fine and then not boot, and it's like, oh, because the minute you remove it from the machine on Windows 7, no matter what sequence you use or anything, it immediately corrupts itself. Think be damned. I was like, what? How? Honestly, they must have spent 1 million man hours of work to make that happen, because that cannot happen normally. It's actually impossible with modern file systems and modern hardware syncs. It shouldn't even be possible I mean, I've unplugged USB drives in the middle of writing data and they're just fine. Like, some of the data doesn't get written, but they don't corrupt. No, now they just corrupt randomly. It's like, what? When did this? And then it turns out that, yeah, connectors and cables and USB booting and BIOSes, and it's all broken. It's all broken. I'm like, wow, none of these bugs existed 15 years ago. And now you can't even boot a machine. It's impossible. You can't write data. You can't, like, all these things that, and sometimes the Windows 7 machine saves you, but sometimes even that cannot overcome because it's the same flood. And so the question is, what does that mean? Especially with like AI and the data centers and the real reason they're building data centers, which cannot possibly be AI, which everybody misses. Just think about how long it takes NVIDIA to actually deliver product and how much they make. And then look at the amount of space they're talking about building in data centers. Tell me if you see a mismatch. So, yeah.
The bubble can't pop soon enough for me.
I know. Well, and it's a big bubble at this point. I don't know what all is going to pop, but everyone's worried about the $40 trillion US debt. And I'm like, nah, it's going to get wiped out by inflation in like 1 week. I don't know what week, but that week's coming. I'll tell you that much. The AI bubble alone should wipe out a good portion of it. There's probably, I don't know, there must be at least 12 trillion wrapped up in AI just at the top level. Forget about the unwind. Who knows what's hidden in all that, and how much of that, like, quote, boomer wealth is real? Because I don't think half of it is. I think it's all imaginary. So we'll find out someday. I think that day's coming soon, but yeah, the sooner the better.
Yeah. So we're gonna have a big hangover afterwards, right? And if you keep on drinking to stop the hangover, you're just gonna make the hangover worse when it shows up.
It's a flood, and people get lost in the flood. And freaking, I don't know if you said, well, you wouldn't have seen this, Father, but Peugeot went after Andrew Wilson over the Candace Andrew Wilson debate, and he said, like, I think everybody should talk about the Odyssey, even if they were comparing the Odyssey to James Joyce and blah 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 blah. And I was like, I actually responded, I'm like, I can explain to you why this is actually the same thing if you'd like. And then I offered to, like, let's do it on YouTube. I was like, I'll just explain to you. No, the Andrew Wilson Candace Owens debate is the same problem as Nolan's Odyssey. You guys are dealing with mirrors and you don't realize it. And and I'm not, I like Andrew Wilson.
Is Candace Owens the mirror then that you see, or is it Andrew Wilson, or is it them talking together?
No, Owens is the mirror. So the way this works, it's weird to me. Really, everyone doesn't know this. It's very strange. So it's the ancient aliens trick. I don't want to pick on Candace because I can't quote her verbatim. It's the ancient aliens trick. Could it be that ancient aliens took the pyramid technology from Egypt to South America? The answer is always yes. It could be, right? But the minute you say that, you've set up a frame. You have not made a claim, though. So you've set a frame without making a claim. So what happens is the frame is empty because there's no claim behind the frame or justifying the frame or anything. This is why I love watching Ancient Aliens. Thank God I don't have cable.
It's just pure fiction.
But it's so much fun because they're so good at what they're doing. Like, the manipulation level is just excellent. I mean, they've gotten better too at the conspiracy side, which pisses me off because I had the best conspiracy theory. And then I recently was at my friend's house, I think about a year ago, and I watched Ancient Aliens. I'm like, man, they really upped their game. I got to up my game now. Damn it. This is a lot of work keeping up with these guys. But you project into that empty frame. That's what you do. You have to, or disengage. Right? You have two choices. You disengage, or you will project into the front frame. So when Candace starts putting things together, right, and then qualifying it, although her problem is she's sloppy, like most people, and so she ends up making claims that are obviously stupid. And a lot of people make claims to things that there's no way they could have any information on, and people don't notice that. I called somebody out on Twitter for this, around this issue. I'm like, you're making all these statements. You weren't there. There's no way you could have access to this information, one way or the other. Like, you couldn't know one way or the other. And when that happens, when Candace says something about, Israel is linked to Charlie Kirk. Well, Israel's linked to everything. Like that, I can link Israel to anything. Israel's linked to the ancient aliens. Like, what are we talking about here? This isn't very hard, right? But then people go, there's a link, right? And then they're trying to figure out what that link is all of a sudden, even though it's like, well, but there's too many possibilities. Who cares? Because it's not a relevant link. And this is where Jordan Peterson gets so close, right? Because he talks with Vervaeke, right? Talks about relevant realization specifically, but Peterson actually gets so funny. We were watching this morning, right? Peterson actually references Vervaeke's work and says, well, what's relevant, right? And he drops it on the floor, unfortunately, but would have been a good discussion for Matt's meeting. That relevance, it's not relevant that people who are connected to Israel, because people who connect to Israel tend to have a lot of money, also gave money to TPUSA. And then, because not everybody who gives money to an organization makes demands of the organization. Right? Like, that's not the way the world works ever. Some do, right? Some things are conditional, but they're rare and they're usually public, right? So it's not that hard. But Candace is taking advantage of the fact that logically, if you're going to give somebody money, you're going to get something out of it, which is just A, false, and B, when it's not false, is not true in a materialist way most of the time.
Right, because you could give money to somebody in order to see to it that your enjoyment and benefit of it is like you're doing your part, right? And so, there's plenty of people who just drop money in the collection basket at church every Sunday, and they're just like, I'm doing my part to support the church, right? And they're not going to come and say, oh, Father, your homilies need to be capped at 9 minutes, otherwise I'm not going to give.
Exactly. Well, and they're caught in a cognitive dissonance that they don't understand or see, right? Which is, these same people will say, well, charities don't often, allocate their funds to the things they're supposed to. But when big donors give to charities, they're always, cutting a deal and watching very carefully. I'm like, well, those two things can't be true. You're gonna pick one. I'm sorry. You don't get it both ways. But because people don't pay attention to that, they don't realize if somebody does that, they are automatically unreliable. Period. With everything. You should just assume it's unreliable with everything. And not listen.
So if they do the empty framing, that trick. Yeah, right. Because it's an invitation to fill in whatever's in that frame. Like,
you're always right. You can't be wrong with an empty frame. It's impossible.
Could it be, Mark, the case that when you present an empty frame, the human mind must fill it?
Yeah. It must. Assuming, and people
assuming engagement. Yeah.
Assuming engagement, but the engagement's already there because you were there to witness the frame.
Yeah.
So that's
if you can. Okay, so this would explain how. Because there would be certain people who could notice this trick, and then just disengage, like, oh, I've seen this before, and it's not just a Mark thing, right? Like,
no.
There's plenty of
people can do it. Yeah,
and it's probably not even dependent on your IQ. You just you know how things work there, and that's why
they feel. Yeah, those people will tell you, no, I'm not watching Ancient Aliens. That's garbage. And you're like, garbage? Why? And I don't think it's garbage only because Ancient Aliens talks about the fringe archaeology that I like to hear about, right? Because they'll go into speculation on new findings. And the only way you're going to get speculation on new findings is A, on TV, because they don't do that in journals ever, right? And B, when you're speculating about other things. And the advantage when you're not a paleontologist talking about paleontology, for example, but you're a geologist talking about paleontology, is that you're going to be more honest and neutral about the paleontology that you know less about. So I use it to extract a certain grade of information from a system.
Sure.
Deliberately.
But like if you're talking to somebody who's caught up in this trap where somebody's presented an empty frame, invited you to fill it, and you didn't notice you're doing that yourself, you just got led along into it. It's really difficult to argue somebody out of that.
You can't. It's impossible.
Yeah. And like so the people who would be most frustrated, by like somebody, their aunt's conspiracy theorizing on Facebook, are going to be like, you're going to be arguing, you're going to be using tools that are not going to actually work. That's
Exactly.
what's going to happen.
Right, because you think that somebody physically gave them a better argument. And you're like, well, I can give you an even better argument, and that better argument trumps the previous argument. But that didn't even happen.
Yeah, there was never an
So
argument.
you're just
to begin
fighting
with.
the wrong war. And
Yeah.
so in Andrew Wilson's case, and I think I said this in my last live stream, but the problem is that I would argue, like, I hate debate culture. I think it's total and complete waste of time for the most part. I would not tell Andrew Wilson not to do it at all, or like whatever he's doing is fine. It's working. Caveat, the thing with Candace Owens, and I think they've realized this went horribly wrong from their perspective, because when he's doing it on the Whatever podcast, that audience is actually a very specific type of audience. And so, and I believe him on this, like, he's a good guy, like, he's just a good human being. So I don't care if he smokes and swears and whatever else. I couldn't possibly be less interested in it. Like, that's not interesting to me as, like, whatever. I've known mechanics and sailors, and like, this is mild stuff. Right. But when he does it on the Whatever podcast, he gets lots of emails from young women going, oh, I didn't realize that what I was doing didn't make any sense. Now, my personal suspicion, I'm not making a claim here because I don't have access to this. I think he's telling the truth, though. I'm almost positive he's telling the truth. I've seen this stuff before. I know all about the internet stuff. Those women are being charmed or enchanted, right? And they're using the logic secondarily, because that's almost always how you use logic. Is always a secondary. It's always, all rationalization is post hoc, right? And so that trick isn't going to work with the Candace crew. A, because they're lunatics. B, because they have no interest in engagement as such. Like, those young women are trying to form relationships and figure out how to form relationships with men. And here's a strong male character who's married with kids, right? Who seems to have it all together. And, oh, by the way, he ain't hurting for money. Right. And so, and he's attractive, and he's got the voice, and like, he's got a lot of enchantment going on. And so in that environment, he's probably highly effective. Right. But in the Candace Owens environment, he's not going to be highly effective because those people aren't, it's a different audience. And it's very easy to get confused with audience. I mean, I remember the first time, it's like, Peterson's like, I was looking at my YouTube channel and I had 1 million subscribers, and I said 1 million's a lot. And I'm like, 1 million is zero on the internet. You may be in the top, what would that be? You may be in the top, like, 96th percentile, or maybe it's the 98th percentile at 1 million subs on your YouTube channel, but it's actually not a lot because the internet is huge. And so you're, in terms of total internet, it's nothing. It's a fraction of a percent. And see, this is where it gets tricky, because what do? Say, no, you shouldn't help 1 million people? Obviously not. If you can help 1 million people, like, go for it, bro. Like, I'm all in, right? So people get confused, and then they get confused by their own audience. And a lot of people blame audience capture for some of the side effects of what this means, right? Because your effectiveness is bounded by the audience in which it works, which is not actually a self-defining system. It's the way you deliver your message is only going to work with the people that are able to hear those components of the message, irrespective of the delivery medium. Don't go all McClellan on me. He's very confused about something, apparently. So basically what that means is, yeah, your audience captured, because your inability to send that message to a different audience keeps you trapped. It's not the audience's fault, though. They blame the audience because they like to blame anybody but themselves. If people miss that pattern, it's like these people just want to blame anybody that's not them, right? They just don't want their worldview to be wrong. But actually, the most likely scenario is that if you see something that you can't explain, it's because your worldview sucks and you just need to get over it and move on with your life. But
Yeah, and learn more, you know?
yeah,
Like-
or don't learn more. Just accept that you're an idiot and
Yeah.
like buy a Muppet mug and like look at it every day, right? And realize, oh, I'm just stupid because the world is infinitely larger than I am from my perspective, and that's fine because it doesn't hinder me from being better. Like it doesn't hinder me from doing good in the world.
Mhm.
So like you don't have to know the effects of smiling at the cashier at the store to have it do good in the world. Like you never have to know what that does ever. It's just not required. The goodness emerges either way, whether you know about it or not. Why are we tied up on knowing particularly ahead of time? I'm like, well, now we're getting in the crazy time.
Now I'm curious, just to puzzle through this, because it's interesting to look at Andrew Wilson, Candace Owens, see that Wilson's approach might not be effective with Owens' audience, but people might want to deal with somebody who's got this style of capture, and Candace Owens certainly isn't the only person out there, creating the frame and inviting you to fill it such that you go and you play yourself there. And I think I saw somebody else on Bridges of Meanings describe what Candace Owens does as a form of sorcery.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And if you're so, I mean, there's ways to protect yourself, right? And the ways to protect yourself is to make sure that your sphere of attention and your sphere of influence are properly calibrated, so that you can get that real-time feedback from the world around you. A useful, like I was getting into some funny Catholic stuff on the internet when I was in seminary, and what cured me of a lot of it was going and doing a pastoral internship in Napoleon, North Dakota. And the things that I was so wrapped up in my head mostly that I thought were super important were entirely irrelevant to these people. And they were looking for other things. And it's just like, oh, okay, so like to be a good priest, I don't have to be as involved with what's going on in Rome and all of the latest rumors out of there, right? So that's a way that you can cultivate your own, just having that connection with the reality around you and focusing your attention on that. But when we're dealing with somebody you care about who's gotten into that kind of trap, and you can get to that kind of trap from different people. It doesn't have to be, Mrs. Farmer's particular brand of that. It's like, how do you help people who are stuck in that?
There's three different approaches, right? So the first and most effective approach that everyone's going to hate is enchantment. You enchant the person. That's how they got there. You want to fight fire with fire? Well, the fire was enchantment and not whatever the heck you think it was. Period. End of statement. It's that simple. If you can't do that, and most people can't, fair enough. Like, don't try to fight Candace Owens' enchantment. That's ridiculous. I mean, I ain't going up against that, whatever that is. That's hard. The thing to do is to be as dismissive as possible towards the source of authority. Right, because you have to downregulate the source of authority signal over and over again. And what people don't understand is the reason why Candace is so effective is because she wasn't like this in the beginning. Something changed, right? So something changed. That's what people miss. Like, she used to do good journalism for sure. Like, I listened to her Macron stuff and her Harvey Weinstein stuff and it was top notch. Actually, she wasn't wrong about any of that. And there's ways you can tell immediately. And like, if she were right with Macron, they would have sued her before she went on air. Period. End of statement. Any other legal strategy is madness from a legal standpoint, which means them trying to sue her after the fact is a PR stunt. I've known lawyers. Definitely, this is what they do. Sorry, I've known lawyers that have done this. They have talked about this. They talk about it publicly occasionally, right? Very occasionally. You gotta listen real carefully. So you know that what she was reporting was correct, or they would have sued her and shut it down immediately. So it's not like she did bad work all the time. Something happened. Charlie Kirk made a lot of people crazy, right? So you get a bunch of people who weren't crazy from COVID who went crazy from Charlie Kirk, actually.
We probably got a little destabilized from COVID.
Well, the whole world got destabilized. Like everybody got destabilized from COVID. And you don't even realize, like, none of us will ever understand in our lifetimes what that did to us. It's the water you swim in. So we don't know how bad that damage is. But at some point she switched from doing investigative journalism into this conspiracy theory stuff. And it just turns out that the easiest way to foment conspiracy theories and also maintain plausible deniability on claims is to create an empty frame, right? And so it's not like you have to learn that from somebody. It comes quite naturally. It's part of the natural pattern of speech, of attraction, of all of these things. And so she sort of indoctrinated her audience and then grabbed new conspiracy theorists along the way because they love that. They are drawn to that because they're very individualistic, right? They're usually, quote, libertarian or anarchists, right? And so when you give them a frame that they can shove whatever their fantasy is in it, they are your best friend for as long as that lasts. And so they're drawn to these sorts of people. And then they infect the group, and it's mass contagion, basically. It's a very simple model, actually. And I think the problem is that doing very simple, straightforward, repetitive things is how you break people out of those patterns. So you down-regulate the authority signal that Candace has by saying, Candace used to do good work, but now she's gone nuts. I don't know why, right? Because you don't have to know why. And then so you can do that with the work, right? You can say, oh, well, you're not dealing with the evidence that this person has brought forth, right? Well, that's when the third strategy comes in, right? And the third strategy follows from the second strategy, right? So the first strategy is enchantment. Second strategy is just down-regulate and blow off whatever they're talking about. That person doesn't know what they're talking about. Just over and over again, right? You don't have to back it up with facts. You just say it over and over again because mimicry is real. And if you say something over and over again around somebody, eventually, right, it will infest their brain. I did this to Sally Joe. I don't think she's ever going to forgive me, but that's okay. It was worth hearing her say moo moo cow cow once. So it was fine. Totally worked.
I guess if you're using your
experiments, I mean, I don't want to tell you stuff I don't know for sure that it absolutely works. I do it all the time to people. Totally
as long as your experimentation is not destroying the world, I think we'll tolerate it. So
I think moo moo cow cow is safe enough.
I can imagine that being funny. So,
but you can come with facts and you can say this can't be true because of this, right? But they have to be simple contradictions. And if you can come with facts, that's strategy number 3, right? You can graduate, you can try enchantment, you can go for strategy number 2 of, right? You always have to do strategy number 2 no matter what. And then you can employ strategy number 3 when you're ready to, like, if somebody wanted, like if somebody said, Mark, can you deprogram a Candace person? And I somehow got talked into trying to do something like that, which would not be my first instinct, believe me. I would have to do a bunch of research, right? I have to do a bunch of research, find all her claims. I mean, Andrew Wilson and his crew's already done the research, most likely. So I've seen some of it, right? And then debunk those claims and say, well, this couldn't possibly be true because of this, right? And like I did with Kirk Jaimungal, who, Kirk Jaimungal is an okay guy. He's just obviously missing some very basic contradictions that he can't, for whatever reason, see that the normal 5 and 6-year-old actually can. I hate to say it, but also actually that's what's happening. People should know this stuff, and I don't understand how they don't. They must be irrational, because you'd have to be irrational to not understand that language is metaphorical, right? You'd have to be irrational to somehow try to discuss God outside of the context of, well, but that came first before everything, and how the hell could we possibly know? Right? Like it doesn't make any sense to speak any other way. And so when you get caught up in these things, when you get caught up in not noticing that, I love Dr. Jordan Peterson, but like ARC, you're not in something that you have any expertise in whatsoever, right? You're dabbling in something that can only eat you, right? Because people don't understand. If politics is a thing, and I don't actually think it is, but I think a bunch of manifestations get you that all look similar, then if you aren't like brought up with the skills of avoiding those things will eat you, like for sure. Like if you get part of the political machine, the odds of political machine are going to eat you are 100%. If you grew up around politics, that might be different. But like Peterson didn't. Like, what's he doing in the political arena, especially at the global scale? Almost nobody should be at the global scale, man. If you didn't grow up, with hundreds of millions of dollars in a trust fund, you should go nowhere near global anything, because it will eat you. I do almost
because you're just not accustomed to dealing with that kind of scale, probably.
Right. And the people in it will either assume good faith and end up corrupting you by accident, or they'll take advantage of you. Right. And then people complain, well, they're keeping me out. Well, yeah, that's because you're dangerous. Like, you don't know what you're doing. I mean, I've had to do this many, many times in software. I'm like, yeah, you can't have this guy in the code base because he doesn't know enough about software engineering to do anything positive. And it's not that he's not necessarily a good engineer. He's just not good in this code base. Like, maybe if he were off making an indie game, he'd be great. He's just not great. Like, there's a lot of software engineers who cannot work on a code base with one other software engineer. They cannot. They'll just break it because they don't take the time to understand what the other person did, because they think they're a better coder. And it's like, but you're not a better coder if you can't cooperate with other coders. Like, you're just not, because two coders is smarter than one. Like, it just, generally speaking. Right. And so you run into these problems, but the solutions are very, very simple. We had a guy. So actually, one of my former titles, no word of a lie, this is 1996, I think, was knowledge engineer. That was the title, the job. We sort of invented this, actually, and it was pre-AI, but I think it was RAG, actually. I think we would call it AI now. But my PhD boss from MIT was disgusted by it and would not call it AI. Everyone else in the company did. He's like, it's not really AI. It's like, oh. But I knew MIT people well, and he was a good sport and everything. But we had a guy who was working with us who was just a pain in the ass. The thing was, he wasn't a very good coder, but man, was he a stickler for the rules. So what I did was I suggested to my boss, who's the PhD, I said, you know what? We really need, and we need a QA team. And like, there's 4 of us, right? So let's just take him and make him QA. He'll be much happier. He was absolutely thrilled. All the code started to work because he wasn't in there screwing it up, because he wanted it done, a certain particular way, right? And very often, because he was him, his certain particular way didn't work and couldn't be made to work. He didn't know that. Fair enough. That happens to people. It's fine, right? So once we put him in charge of QA, though, man, our code quality went way up, because he was so careful with the tests. And if you failed a test, it was over for you, because he was kicking it right back to you. And the good part was, he'd stay at his desk and do it and not come thank God. Right? But knowing that that's how you have to set that up, and that requires hierarchy and ordering and all these other things. So when you point out that the ordering isn't there over and over again, or that the order is wrong or impossible over and over again, that's the third way out, right? Is to point out what Candace is saying can't be true, because she can't have access to the things she's talking about. She wasn't there. She's not friend. Like, she told Erica she'd stop. If Erica told her to stop, Erica told her to stop. She didn't stop. She's clearly not a reliable person, right? You're not a reliable human being if you do that publicly, right? If you do it privately and you witness it, you're also not a reliable person. If it happened privately, you don't know about it. Don't worry about that case. That case doesn't apply. Right? But even just that, like the fact that some things happen in private and you don't know about them seems to not have occurred to any of these people. Because it's really easy to know who's telling the truth. Like, are you making a claim that it is impossible for you to make a claim about because you weren't there? You would think that would be a quick and easy one where people could just go, they make claims about ancient aliens. They weren't near the ancient aliens. This isn't rocket science. Anybody can actually do that. It's first order logic. This person wasn't there. How the hell do they know? This person wasn't in the autopsy. What do they know about the autopsy findings? They know what they read and interpreted. Okay, is what gets written in an autopsy file 1/100th of whatever? Do they have a degree in pathology or medicine or any of the? No. Why are we listening to them about any of this stuff then? This is not that hard, right? But for a person who's enchanted, you've got to point out to them, no. This contradiction, this is cognitive dissonance. This, you have to, whatever terminology you have to use, and different people do different terminology. That's how you get them out of it. That's how you get them out of it. And that does work. It just takes a hell of a long time. Enchantment's so much quicker. Enchantment's great. Like if you can do enchantment, go with that one. Skip to steps 2 and 3. You don't need them. And sometimes just step 2 works. It just, again, these things take a long time.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. That's part of what makes navigating the internet so tricky, is that you can get into a good old fashioned echo chamber where everybody's on board with the same narrative.
Yeah.
And then like just getting like even like a subtle signal to, like going back to young Father Sites in the seminary when he's getting a little too into online stuff. I get out into off the internet talking to people, and it's like, oh, none of these people care about this.
That's right.
Maybe it's actually not important, right? And so I didn't even need the priest I was studying under to like sit me down and explain these things to me. I paid attention and oh yeah, nobody cares here what's going on in Rome. And honestly, like the fact that they are worried about their children and their businesses, it's like, well, that means that these are good people who are engaged with what God has given them, right? And well, maybe I should be a little more engaged with that, a little less engaged with those things out there. So even that, just somebody's locked into listening to a bad voice, just giving that feedback of like, hey, this isn't good stuff right here. You can you shouldn't listen to it. Maybe that's all the feedback you need.
Ask them what are you going to do about it, right? And actually say who cares. Right, because they'll actually start thinking, well, who cares about this? Do those people care about me, or do they just want me part of their club so they can say they have more followers? All right, and because those strategies all work, right? Is pointing out to them over and over again, right? And then the other thing you can do is like, instead of paying attention to this, what did you skip? Right? Did you skip going to the gym? Did you skip reading Aquinas? Did you skip leg day? Right?
Don't skip leg day.
Did you fail to make Final Cause great again? Like, what do what things that you actually have, this is where pragmatism saves you every time, right? What things do you actually have control over that you could be doing that you weren't doing because you were busy watching Candace Owens or listening to Alex Jones, which you should do for entertainment purposes.
Okay, Alex, if you're there for the entertainment and then to mind the occasional nugget, there's the occasional nugget with Alex Jones.
Absolutely.
If he had written fiction, I think we'd be hailing him as a great author.
He'd be the greatest fiction author of all time. There's no question about it. But asking people those questions too, like, well, when you're doing this, what are you neglecting? Like, what are you neglecting that you don't have to neglect? Right? Is it your family? Is it your friends? Is it, actually enriching your life? And I think that's part of the problem, because all the enemy has to do is sow chaos and confusion, right? They don't have to instantiate evil. Chaos and confusion will instantiate enough evil to please them.
Mark,
They
that
don't-
sounds diabolical.
The evil is
Christian
diabolical.
forgets it.
And
Yeah, no, it just means to scatter.
yes, it is diabolical. It's not only the opposite of good or something. That's not only what it is. There's two strategies that evil can take. There's only one strategy to be good. That's the problem. It's very asymmetrical.
Mm-hmm. Well, sometimes the asymmetry, like the asymmetry between just considering and accomplishing, which is where this live stream started off with, and maybe that's maybe that's another trouble with internet conspiracy theorizing, is you feel like, I mean, you're getting a couple different things in there. You're getting the vice of curiosity, the intemperate pursuit of information, we could say. That's a vice that's very easily possible.
Adopted.
Yeah, on the internet. Like this is a curiosity machine right here. It's just terrible. And then it's also, you get the sense that you're a part of something important, right? Like there's this grand lie, and I get to be a part of the truth movement that uncovers it. And then when we have disclosure day, then that's going to be, the time of the harmonic convergence, and that's gonna fix everything.
The truth will set you free, people. They're the worst. They're the overemphasis on the truth, right? And now a bunch of them have switched to beauty. I'm like, yeah, that's not gonna work either, guys. You're making the same mistake with a different.
Who is truth?
Well, it's more like, what is the totality of the truth, and how do I participate in it?
It's a person, and you participate by going to church, Mark.
That's how you participate, Father.
Yeah. So in John's gospel, Mark, just because I know I have to explain this to you, Jesus says, "I am the truth."
Yeah, in the way and the light or something, isn't that
the
I'm the
life.
way, the truth, and the life. Yes.
Yeah. So
No man comes to the Father but by me.
maybe somebody had told St. Paul that, and so when he wrote, "The truth will set you free," like he had that in the background, and he knew his audience had that. It's like it's all interconnected.
It works in context,
Yeah.
but we're all postmoderns, and we all copy paste. And
I am not a postmodern.
I hope not.
Mark,
I hope not.
Mark, it is today. It is not tomorrow right now.
Excellent. Okay,
That is true. Yes.
you fixed it. Excellent.
I do not live in tomorrow. I
Mhm.
don't even know if I'd want that.
Sounds horrible.
Yeah, right. Like it's always tomorrow and it's never today. How are you going to do anything? How are you going to get anything done today if you're in tomorrow? And that's what
just people.
the beginning of the stream is all about. If you're just living in your imagination, imagining that you're doing useful things, no matter how good and useful those useful things you're imagining them doing, it's only happening in your imagination, and so is therefore only an imaginary accomplishment.
And I think one of the things that we don't want to just imagine is FargoCon.
That's right.
You're right. It's still in the contemplation phase, Christopher, but keep the pressure on.
It needs to be manifest.
Yeah.
Manifestation, very important with FargoCon.
Yeah. Yes, indeed. It
We
might
need
be
to
Valley
implement
City Con,
FargoCon. Yeah.
and we do it at Maryvale Convent, which has a gorgeous location on the Cheyenne River in the Cheyenne River Valley. There's actual topography in eastern North Dakota. Do you have any idea how rare that is?
That's pretty rare. I do, actually, quite a bit. I just have to extend my knowledge of the East River, South Dakota, up north.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so the
Sounds
Cheyenne River
miserable.
Valley, we should, if we're willing to do a small shoestring budget kind of thing, that could be pretty easily put together. So leave a comment if you think I should put on a small, intimate gathering, and who you might want to see at that gathering. They have to be affordable.
I want a huge gathering, Father. I want all the important people.
Okay, well, why don't you do
Me and
that, and
Christ.
I'll do the small one, because everybody knows that the small ones are the best.
Well, that's true. That's true.
Oh,
As long as Ted's there.
well, that's the guy I'm most worried about not getting because he's got so many mouths to feed, Mark.
He's yeah. What's this family first thing? He's got to be here with us. We need help.
He has civilization growing out of him.
I know. I know. He found a whole new civilization all by himself over there.
Well, I am curious, Fozzer, when you say affordable, how affordable? Like, could you name someone who would be like in the range?
I mean, I'm thinking we got to go for the diamond in the rough approach here of like somebody who is really eager to say a good word to people and doesn't even care if they get paid for it.
Talk to Castle. Talk to
Yeah.
Castle. Castle's got
Yeah,
these
yeah.
contacts.
Yeah. And that'd be a real useful one. That's that because that was kind of the convivium, like I had my thing on the Psalms. Dr. Jim had some great material on
Mm.
T.S. Eliot that I think he just wanted to tell people about, and people were there to listen. And then Ted, all these T names with 3 letters. He had his inscaping with T.S. Eliot, and it was all very useful. And then it was a nice setting, although being invaded by the weekend Bible camp kids was a little odd. But
Made lunch
can make that
weird.
work.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, things don't have to get any weirder. There can be an end to the weirdness, and it's dark outside, so we're just going to end the weirdness right now. And I'm going to go to bed because that's what a rational creature would do. So, thank you for your participation. Thank you for your time, energy, and attention. And good night, and God bless you all.
Good night, Father.